Arizona v. Fulminante, Supreme Court, 1991. Justice White delivered an opinion, parts 1 and 2, which are the opinion of the court. The Arizona Supreme Court ruled in this case that Respondent Oreste Fulminante's confession, received in evidence at his trial for murder, had been coerced and that its use against him was barred by the 5th and 14th Amendments to the United States Constitution. 1. Early in the morning of September 14, 1982, Fulminante called the Mesa, Arizona Police Department to report that his 11-year-old stepdaughter, Janine Michelle Hunt, was missing. He had been caring for Janine while his wife, Janine's mother, was in the hospital. 2 days later, Janine's body was found in the desert east of Mesa. She had been shot twice in the head at close range with a large caliber weapon, and a ligature was around her neck. Because of the decomposed condition of the body, it was impossible to tell whether she had been sexually assaulted. Fulminante's statements to police concerning Janine's disappearance and his relationship with her contained a number of inconsistencies, and he became a suspect in her killing. When no charges were filed against him, Fulminante left Arizona for New Jersey. Fulminante was later convicted in New Jersey on federal charges of possession of a firearm by a felon. Fulminante was incarcerated in the Ray Brook Federal Correctional Institute in New York. There he became friends with another inmate, Anthony Ceravola, then serving a 60-day sentence for extortion. The two men came to spend several hours a day together. Ceravola, a former police officer, had been involved in loan sharking for organized crime, but then became a paid informant for the FBI. While at Raybrook, he masqueraded as an organized crime figure. After becoming friends with Fulminante, Ceravola heard a rumor that Fulminante was suspected of killing a child in Arizona. Ceravola then raised the subject with Fulminante in several conversations, but Fulminante repeatedly denied any involvement in Janine's death. During one conversation, he told Ceravola that Janine had been killed by bikers looking for drugs. On another occasion, he said he did not know what had happened. Ceravola passed this information on to an agent of the FBI who instructed Ceravola to find out more. Ceravola learned more one evening in October of 1983 as he and Fulminante walked together around the prison track. Ceravola knew Fulminante was starting to get some tough treatment and whatnot from other inmates because of the rumor. Ceravola offered to protect Fulminante from his fellow inmates, but told him, "You have to tell me about it, you know. In other words, for me to give you any help." Fulminante then admitted to Ceravola that he had driven Janine to the desert on his motorcycle, where he choked her, sexually assaulted her, and made her beg for her life before shooting her twice in the head. Ceravola was released from prison in November 1983. Fulminante was released the following May, only to be arrested the next month for another weapons violation. September 4th, 1984, Fulminante was indicted in Arizona for the first-degree murder of Janine. Prior to trial, Fulminante moved to suppress the statement he had given Ceravola in prison, as well as a second confession he had given to Donna Ceravola, then Anthony Ceravola's fiancée and later his wife, following his May 1984 release from prison. He asserted that the confession to Ceravola was coerced and that the second confession was the fruit of the first. Following the hearing, the trial court denied the motion to suppress, specifically finding that, based on the stipulated facts, the confessions were voluntary. The state introduced both confessions as evidence at trial, and on December 19, 1985, Fulminante was convicted of Janine's murder. He was subsequently sentenced to death. Fulminante appealed, arguing, among other things, that his confession to Ceravola was the product of coercion and that its admission at trial violated his due process under the 5th and 14th Amendments to the United States Constitution. After considering the evidence at trial, as well as the stipulated facts before the trial court on the motion to suppress, the Arizona Supreme Court held that the confession was coerced, but initially determined that the admission of the confession at trial was harmless error because of the overwhelming nature of the evidence against Fulminante. Upon Fulminante's motion for reconsideration, however, the court ruled that this court's precedent precluded the use of the harmless error analysis in the case of a coerced confession. The court therefore reversed the conviction and ordered that Fulminante be retried without the use of the confession to Ceravola. 2. We deal first with the state's contention that the court below erred in holding Fulminante's confession to have been coerced. We normally give great deference to the factual findings of the state court. Nevertheless, the ultimate issue of voluntariness is a legal question requiring independent federal determination. Although the question is a close one, we agree with the Arizona Supreme Court's conclusion that Fulminante's confession was coerced. The Arizona Supreme Court found a credible threat of physical violence unless Fulminante confessed. Our cases have made clear that a finding of coercion need not depend on actual violence by a government agent. A credible threat is sufficient. As we have said, coercion can be mental as well as physical, and the blood of the accused is not the only hallmark of an unconstitutional inquisition. As in Payne, where the court found that a confession was coerced because the interrogating police officer had promised that if the accused confessed, the officer would protect the accused from an angry mob outside the jailhouse door, so too here, the Arizona Supreme Court found that it was fear of physical violence, absent protection from his friend and government agent, Saravola, which motivated Fulminante to confess. Accepting the Arizona court's finding, permissible on this record, that there was a credible threat of violence, we agree with its conclusion that Fulminante's will was overborne in such a way as to render his confession the product of coercion.